Self-criticism. It can be one of the most disabling components of our psychological well-being. And unfortunately for the majority of us, we are our own worst critic. Friendships, relationships, and career growth can all be directly affected as a consequence of our own self-criticism and self-evaluation. And we will therefore go on and really overthink whether we're good enough in all of these areas. Today I wanted to debunk this using my own criteria that I've identified over the past couple of years that I do as a sign that are you overly self-critical? And if you are, let's try and break that down together. Unfortunately, being overly self-critical has been highly linked to low self-esteem, depression and perfectionism. The latter is becoming incredibly common in today's youth, and is something I've previously written about. I'll put the link for that post down below. However, self-criticism can sometimes become second nature to us. It becomes such a core component of our lives, it feels like it's almost impossible to get rid of. And because of that, it's almost like our brains go into autopilot when we are self-critical, and we may not actually be realizing the damage that we're doing to ourselves. So today I wanted to list a couple of examples of being overly self-critical that I have done through the majority of my adult life since I was a young teenager, and to highlight these points. And hopefully, if any of them relate to you, this may be able to help yourself identify that you are being too self-critical in yourself, and that hopefully you can get better moving forward. So let's start with number one. So, blaming yourself for every situation is what I would consider the pinnacle of someone being self-critical about themselves. Do you feel personally responsible when something bad happens? When something goes wrong, do you feel like that's your fault? I battle that regrettably. Every time an experiment at work doesn't go right, I feel like that's on me. When I apply for various applications or write certain pieces that don't really work or flow, I assume that I'm a bad writer, or I'm bad and I'm not equipped to tackle that particular thing. Because actually sometimes you just don't, you don't succeed. That's just how it happens. That's just how life works. Life isn't this trend line of success. You don't do things and succeed every time. The world's greatest thinkers have said that. Albert Einstein, for example, well established and said that success is a tangle. It's not, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but it's, success is like picking out your headphones from your bag and then realizing, oh no, they're tangled all over the place. That's just how it is. I haven't jumped from, not being successful in terms of my academic career to now doing pretty well. There was a lot of failures along the way. So in terms of, I'm doing a PhD now. Before I got the position I'm in now, I applied, I think, to 7 others. Got interviews for all of them, but didn't get accepted to any of them. So, it's incredibly deflating, but I pushed through it. And then I got what I've got now. So that's my point. If you fail, or something went wrong, don't assume it's all your fault or that's the end of it, because the end of it just isn't. I think the main point or statement that people make when they think this as a primary self-criticism is that they say, I am a failure. You're not. Okay? Just because just say you made a life mistake. Mistakes are lessons, lessons learned, and they help you grow if you learn from them. If you don't learn from a mistake, then of course then that's an issue. But it's how you get life experience. It's how people become wise when they're older. They get exposed to not necessarily good things in their life, and it gives them wisdom later on in life. I think that's a good thing. So please, if something goes wrong, don't feel like you're a failure. 99.9% you're not. social media is further adding fuel to this destructive fire. I think a lot of the younger generation will browse through social media apps like Instagram and then feel completely insufficient compared to some of the images you see. So, you know, models on Instagram, of course, and some of those images that might get posted may result in some serious self-criticism, especially in like young women. Look up to models on Instagram, for example. But you need to kind of realise that you can't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You know, people aren't posting it. The majority of these models aren't posting their behind the scenes on Instagram. You have no idea what they look like when they get out of bed. You don't know what they're suffering with. You don't know what their lives are. So why are you comparing yourself to them just because of a photoshopped image that they put on Instagram? You shouldn't be doing that. It's not healthy, and it's not helping your life in any way. For the majority of things that get posted on, for example, Instagram that make you feel insufficient, they require financial backing to do, you know. And for this point, there's only really one statement I want to make that I hope that you will repeat, and that is simply, money doesn't buy happiness, and it never will. And evidence has shown this to be true in quite the most saddening of ways, really. If you think about news stories of celebrities who have committed suicide, I think more recently you've got Chester Bennington of Linkin Park, you've got Alexander McQueen, and then Robin Williams as well. These are only a few of countless celebrities who have taken their own lives, despite the amount of money that they must earn, or must have earned. So clearly there's something going on there that isn't just, just having loads of money doesn't automatically mean you won't suffer with depression or anxiety. In fact, if anything, being pestered all the time by paparazzi, for example, might actually further stimulate those problems. When you've got money, you'll be more likely to spend it on drugs and alcohol, things like that, which will obviously escalate the problem a lot worse. Do not fall into the trap of superficial happiness, okay? Just focus on the health and happiness of yourself and your loved ones. That's the most important. Be grateful for what you do have rather than what you don't. So, this one's a big one for me. I have always considered myself to be overweight, I think since I was about 14. Back in 2012 I went down from about 16 stone to 11. For anyone that's American and doesn't use the metric system, that's about, I think, 210 pounds down to around 150. So it was quite a lot, to the point I was like noticeably, I look back on photos now and I'm scarily skinny. But even then, when I looked in the mirror, I still considered myself fat. So sometimes it's like impossible for us to let go of physical appearance problems, and it can plague anyone of all shapes and sizes. You know, you can have a problem with your image regardless if you're slim, slightly overweight, underweight, or if you're just generally a good build. People can still have this negative assumption of how they look, and it's important to and that's important to remember. You're definitely not the only one struggling with this if that does bother you, and it isn't actually necessarily to do with how you actually appear, but more to do with how you see yourself. And if you can hopefully tackle that, maybe you can help how you see your physical appearance in the future. If you don't ever look good enough in your own eyes, you're being too self-critical. Perhaps it's time that you asked a friend or family member for a second, a third, a fourth opinion. It's very likely, of course, you'll probably say, oh, they're just saying that to make myself feel better, but actually they're probably not. You know, generally 9 times out of 10, when I have been overweight in my life, my mum has said that and said that I need to lose weight. So I think there is a lot of honesty specifically within a family group to look after your health, for example. So it actually might be worthwhile to actually talk to your family if you feel like you have a body image problem. But again, this links back to comparing yourself to others, okay? Please don't start comparing yourself to an image of a supermodel or some really buff dude on Instagram where they've had like 100,000 likes on the photo. This isn't the norm of how people look. If you want to get the norm of how people look in today's society, step out your door, go to the shop, see the differences in body types. They're so drastic. Seeing these like, super fit people on Instagram isn't a good representation of what life is. So please don't think that you have to look like that to be happy with the skin you're in. So it's absolutely essential that we boost our own self-esteem with positive messages. If we provide ourselves with motivation and support, it can really help us get through a difficult time and a difficult period in our lives. It might help us go through that extra mile to finish a project or finish something at work or help with relationships or something like that. It can be really important that you do that. Unfortunately for some of us, giving ourselves positive motivation, the idea of it seems absolutely ridiculous. And if you feel like this, it's a sign of excessive self-criticism. If you can't compliment yourself, and you can't see good things that you've done or in your life, that means you're too negative towards yourself. And that's something that I do it all the time. But it's something we need to fight against. Sometimes I'll write a list of positive things that I've done in my life, and then actually as I accumulate them I go, oh, well, actually I've done quite a lot. But you don't think about it until you've actually written it down, and then maybe ask other people that have known you for an extended period of time what good things you've done that have stood out or made them proud or something like that. And I think that's really important. If you work really hard at something, complimenting your determination for that hard work is an absolute essentiality. So please, if you work hard, compliment yourself. It's important. So this further supports the previous point, or aligns with the previous point, in that if you don't see positives in yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to take compliments from others surrounding yourself as a person. For example, I find it difficult to accept nice words from friends, simply because of previous mistakes that I previously considered to be unforgivable. However, the main thing I need to kind of remember is that I can't change the past. I can change what I'm doing now, but the past is done, and I shouldn't let that define me as an individual. And I shouldn't actually have to live my life in misery simply because of a few mistakes that I've previously made. Like I said, we all make mistakes. Learning from them is the key important. Some parents can get frustrated if their child doesn't grow up into the idealised vision that they thought a person should be. This doesn't happen often, but unfortunately it does happen. An example might be a child coming out as gay, whilst their parents remain rather closed-minded regarding sexuality. And over the years, the child may actually assimilate negative messages which were directly provided by their parents, and this will result in them developing their own inner critic regarding their sexuality. And at the end of the day, it's important to remember that outside criticisms are opinions, they're not fact. And for every negative individual that you come across in your life, it's highly probable that you'll find dozens of positive people to supplement the negative ones. So, if any of these sound remotely familiar, then it's likely that you're being too self-critical, and you may want to seek support to help fight against this. And that might just be in the way of friends and family. So it's really important that you do approach them and express your concerns surrounding these questions and get their opinions on them. They may be able to help. My hope is that things like this may be able to help other people put their worries and anxieties at rest. It's not going to happen overnight, like I said, I still struggle with some of these sometimes, but if you identify them and you know you're doing it, it might actually be able to help you move forward and help yourself to fight these unnormal negative feelings towards yourself. Everyone can be self-critical, but we shouldn't let that crucify us. We all provide something unique, and we are all individual. There is no one on this planet like you except you. Surely that's a positive thing in itself. So please at least remember that when you're feeling down. And if not, please remember this quote. You've been criticising yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. So thanks very much for listening. I obviously have a blog which talks about a lot of aspects of mental health, including depression and anxiety. I'll have a written piece of this video on the blog. I'll probably put the link in the entire video for the entirety. You can follow me on the gram if you want, which is just bog standard rubbish normally about my PhD and stuff if you're interested in that sort of thing. But yeah, if you do need any help, you can contact me at notsomentalhealth@gmail.com, which is specifically for mental health inquiries. So if you want to talk in full disclosure and privacy, then feel free to shoot me an email, and we can talk about this in more detail. But yeah, if there's any way I can help, then that would be great. I hope this helps you move forward with some otherwise annoying self-criticisms. We're all great. Please accept it. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Ciao. Fuck.